Personal Development Show. This is the platform where your personal value is enriched on a weekly basis. Springboard is brought to you by Legacy and Legacy and your superstation Joy 99.7 FM. The broadcast is made possible by the kind courtesy of some of Ghana's finest brands committed to the development of our nation's human capital. Springboard would like to thank these companies for supporting us to bring you the agenda for the year 2020. MTN Pulse Just Be, the Enterprise Group, Enterprise Your Advantage, UMB Bank, UMB Speed Up, DigiBank, Let's Go, and Access Pension Trust, your reliable partner in pensions. Special thanks to our print media partner, The Graphic Business. Thank you for joining us on Joy FM and also on Facebook. My name is Albert Okran, and I'm here with my virtual academic board chaired by Comfort, with the support of Matthew, Priscilla, David, Amos, Emmanuel, and Jojo. I have a big show for you tonight. We are joined by Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta. Call a friend to tune in and you will discover something you didn't know before. But just before that, let me remind you that on Saturday, the 7th of March, the Springboard Roadshow moves to Cape Coast to the UCC Auditorium 900 from 12 noon to 5 p.m. If you know someone in Cape Coast destined for the top, desirous to develop themselves, somebody with potential you would like to see equipped, direct them to Auditorium 900 at the University of Cape Coast from 12 noon to 5 p.m. on Saturday as they join us for Springboard in Cape Coast. You can also join us live on Facebook and enjoy every part of the experience, including fantastic prizes in the wow moments from MTN, Enterprise, and UMB. So, it is 20 more days to the global convocation of Springboard Roadshow on Saturday the 21st of March from 12 noon at the Grand Arena of the International Conference Center. Just call 0249999 for details. Well, in the year 2001, Ken Ofori-Atta returned from Aspen, Colorado in the USA as a Henry Crown Fellow with a mandate to start a leadership fellowship in Africa or West Africa as his project. Fast forward 2 decades later, and from an initial class of 24 fellows, we have 422 fellows in different countries across the continent. And this week, 110 of them from 9 African countries converged in Accra for what is called the Africa Impact Forum, the second in the series, on the theme Building to Last, Leadership versus Systems. Very interesting theme, very interesting topic discussion. Building to Last, Leadership versus Systems. I'm joined here on Springboard by Ken Ofori-Atta, who we all know as the Honorable Finance Minister of Ghana, and I'm confident that we'll get a sense of the past, the present, and the future of the Africa Leadership Initiative, and possibly glean a few thoughts about himself, like why he always wears white. and who exactly is Ken Ofori-Atta? We'll be finding out more as we unpack the issues with our guest for tonight. Ken, welcome to Springboard.
Thank you so much. It's so pleasant to be here. I haven't been here in ages, but
yes,
as usual, Angie always leads the way. I gather she was here a week ago.
Yes, she was here a couple of weeks ago on mental health. Great shows, 2 shows back to back on mental health. We got response from all over the world. Great show. But
so
it's good to see you.
In her footsteps. Great.
Welcome once again.
Thank you.
So let's start with Africa Leadership Initiative. And for the benefit of our listeners, a couple of months ago, in celebrating, I believe it was Kofi Dazi on the show, we had Kwaku Sijado call in and trying to trace the link between himself, who was on the line, and Patrick Ewua and Kofi Dazi. I mentioned that they were Aliwa fellows. And then I allowed Kofi to give a little gist about Aliwa, and everybody was asking, what is that? We need to know more about it. So I promised that in the last week of February, we'll have a show about Aliwa. And here we are today with the founder. So Ken, what exactly is the Africa Leadership Initiative?
Thanks so much, Albert. As you mentioned, I was invited to the Henry Crown Fellowship Program in Aspen, which had started a program really in sort of the dot-com period in which a lot of young people became fabulously wealthy. So there's a sudden spurt of success. And the question that Aspen was asking is, how do you translate the success, which is quite individual and could be egotistic, into significance? How do you translate it to impact your community or your society? And I'm very blessed to have had Peter Ryland, who used to be head of TechnoServe in Ghana and become president of TechnoServe in the US. And he pushed the envelope and asked for the first African to be part of the fellowship program. And that's how I got there. But then each program, each fellow has to have a leadership project. And Peter had gone through the program and felt that his community was actually not America, but it was Africa and Latin America, because that's where he has spent a good part of his career. So he chose to replicate the Henry Crown Fellowship Program, and that's when he found myself in Ghana, Isaac Shongo in South Africa, Alim Furuki in Tanzania, Romeo Rodriguez in Mozambique. And the pilot started, the seed was sown in Ghana, in Cape Coast, where we had our first inaugural class, including Kweku Sechiado, Karen, Gloria Kufu, Frankie Du, a whole host of really powerful people. And that was the beginning of what has now become a 422 member class of fellows across the continent, all reaching and seeking to do things beyond themselves, to look at the intractable problems in our society and say, how do we approach it in a different way, with optimism and a surety of finding solutions.
We're going to try and locate quite a number of fellows tonight doing stuff across the country and across the continent, and try and string the dots or bring the dots together. But very importantly, Ken, you mentioned two things. That the whole motivation was a group of people who had done very well individually, who were being challenged to look beyond themselves at how their success, their individual achievements could be more beneficial to the wider community. I listened to Jim Ron talk about from success to significance, and it was quite a phenomenal message. So I can relate very much to the whole concept. You also mentioned that beyond the Henry Crown group, you were the first African who got the privilege of being part of this fellowship. And the next step was, how do we bring this here into Africa? So coming into Africa, trace the spread from Cape Coast, the first group of fellows, and how it ended up in so many countries across the continent.
From Cape Coast, tested it and felt that this was good. And then the identification of Ali Mofuruki, so then a pilot was also done in Zanzibar. And we got the gist that it was also resonating. Then Isaac Shongoe in South Africa. And then that also captured the imagination. And Romeo in Mozambique, so that we had sort of a complete continent, at least sub-Sahara. But I think the enduring issue here is that the fellows go through 4 common seminars. The first being the challenges of leadership, so that you read about let's say Martin Luther King or Gandhi or Mandela or Jack Stark, etc. And you begin to realize that each one, in whatever period they were in, had a certain problem that they found a solution to. So it is really to rid us of this sense that the problems that we have currently are so overwhelming that you can't do it. So Gandhi goes back to India, sees the upper middle class, decides, let me take a train and go around the country and understand what the people are feeling. Then he comes back, looks at the British colonization, and believes that a salt walk will break this hold and open people's minds. So he does that. And you saw what Martin Luther King did. If you read his letter from Birmingham jail, his challenge to the comfort of the middle class pastors, that what is wrong, and therefore we should fight evil. And you see Mandela's issues of 27 years in Robben Island. So at some point, you all begin to realize, let's not hide behind the excuse of the problems which seem intractable, but they can be tackled, and we have the tools within us to do that. But the key issue about those tools is whether you can then frame a moral compass within you that really makes you clear that truth is a paradox, but there's wisdom. So you read something like the Heart Aroused, of Solomon giving a servant, 3 messages, which says, remember the old road, the ancient paths that work, and don't just facilitate. Now, when you get a problem, don't react emotionally. Maybe sleep over it. You might come up with a different answer. So these kind of jewels of wisdom that then gives you sort of the buffer and the backbone to know that there are many ways to resolve issues. There's truth, but there's wisdom. There are facts, but there's a power within you that can do much more. So that then becomes sort of the rallying call and the cry for one to live a life of integrity, a life of significance, and diminish, maybe materialism to a certain degree, because you see yourself as a channel and as a steward of certain gifts, because there's nothing that you really have that has not been given to you.
Let me speak to the issue of projects. You mentioned that each fellow has a project, and you've traced to say that in the readings, in the interactions, you get to read about how others within their jurisdictions and their generations dealt with the issues that confronted them. Ultimately, you say that every fellow would leave the fellowship or the conference or the interaction with a project that they have selected.
Right.
Help us understand how these projects are selected and what they are supposed to achieve.
Well, it's really something dear to your heart. So, for example, my project was then, bringing Henry Crown with Peter to Africa, and 2 decades later, we are where we are. Then you have Patrick, who is a member, the Ashesi experience. See where he is, and he was also a winner of what we call the McNulty Prize, which helps to push people further. Then you go to Nigeria. Iboje, for example, set up an Africa Initiative for Governance, in which he funds, I think, 5 fellows to go to Oxford every year, and then they come back into the public service. You have Amina, who is the chair of the West Africa Enterprise, with her work on women. That also has won quite a number. And then Asian Osaki of the Legacy Girls, and Asian Son. So it's a constant push for areas that are dear to your heart in education, in technology, etc., which really goes to impact your society.
Right. So for the benefit of listeners, this talking about projects, it needn't be something that you are beginning. It could be something you are doing already that is being challenged to take it to a whole new level. And so in the case of Comfort and I, Springboard was something that we had started already, but becoming Aliwa Fellows challenged us to take this to a whole new level. And here we are several years later, talking about 200,000 alumni from this initiative and over 1 million digital participants by the power of technology. What is it that you are doing? Maybe let's find out, Ken, for the listener listening tonight and saying, okay, so that resonates with me. Is there a place for the listener listening today? Can they dream or aspire to become a fellow of the Africa Leadership Initiative, and what do they need to do?
Yeah, there's an office set up. The Data Bank has been sponsoring it for I guess since we started, and people are nominated. I don't know whether at least in my time, I know that people did not write in to sort of promote themselves, but the fellows would nominate various people, and you go through an interview process in which then each class is about 25 people. So about 12 people will be selected from Ghana and another 12 from Nigeria. So the combined class brought a certain real positive chemistry of the ECOWAS system, which has worked phenomenally well. So you have Araba and Pebbles at DataBank who run the office, and that is the way to get it. But I think the realization also, and Isaac Shongwe, who was one of the founders, has started a youth fellowship, YALI, which really is saying how much sooner should we get people to inculcate these values and this sense of purpose for their societies. So I think that's an exciting venture that likely all the regions will also begin to do.
So two things are clear. For a person to become a fellow, the person must be nominated by an existing fellow and then vetted through the process for selection.
Yeah.
All right. If you just joined us, this is Springboard of Virtual University, 21 minutes past the hour of 7 o'clock. I get to have the privilege of hosting Ken Ofori-Atta, the founder of the Africa Leadership Initiative, as we try to unpack what this initiative is all about and why you could possibly be the next Ali Fellow or Aliwa Fellow, because the West Africa Fellowship is a combination of Ghana and Nigeria for that matter. And so we want to understand the whole selection process as well as also how it operates. You mentioned the McNulty Prize and you mentioned Patrick as one of the winners. Just help us to understand how the McNulty Prize fits into the whole scheme of projects.
I think you captured it, Albert. I mean, the McNulty Prize, McNulty was an investment banker, John, who passed, and they were members of the Aspen Institute. So the wife was really sort of taken by what Aspen Institute does and the Henry Crown Fellowship Program, that she decided to set up this foundation which will further support the work that the fellows, the Henry Crown Fellows, and therefore the Africa Leadership Initiative Fellows, etc., were doing to extend the reach and make it more impactful. So social, economic, and environmental challenges that we have in our time. And yes, Patrick was one of the early winners, which brought $100,000 to him.
Was it $150,000?
It's $100,000.
Right.
And then, yes, I would say so. And then more recently, Dr. Esiansa also won
for her work with age.
For her work with age.
Right.
And that was more what she got, what they call the Catalyst Prize.
Right.
It's about $25,000. Yeah.
Right. Let's talk about, you mentioned also YALI. That meant that the fellowship had begun to look at how to get more young people involved in this initiative. For what we do as Springboard, traveling around the country year after year, interacting with our young people, there's so much energy, so much possibility, so much that these young people can contribute to national development. And I can't help but remember the words of, is it Ralph, who said that the many of the leaders that we look up to throughout the generations of Africa made their contributions at a relatively young age. How do we, looking at the average age of the Aliwa Fellows, they generally are people that you will call successful, who are seeking to make a significant impact. How do we bring on board the younger generation who are starting afresh within the West African context?
I think it's important. I mean, I'm 60 now. It just surprises me to no end. I need to take myself a bit more seriously. So this was 20 years ago when we were 40. And so we need to remember that. And then if you look at the African demographics, it's just crazy with regards to the age bracket under 35. And then by 2050, I think there will be the largest youth population in the world, over 600 million in Africa. So clearly we need to intervene. this is the force for good for future, and we need to be really clear about the software and the skill set that this generation has. And I believe programs like Ali, would enshrine the software, the attitude, the push for excellence, the issue of integrity, your commitment to society beyond yourself. So I think it's a matter of urgency for all of the Ali programs to really craft a way in which we evangelize this message. And my suspicion is that fellows programs such as Springboard, etc., are going to be really key to being able to do this. It's a fascinating and exciting future that we have if we take the responsibility of making sure that human capital is quote unquote fit for purpose in the future.
I cast my mind back to those years when your work allowed you to do a bit more of Springboard on the road, traveling, speaking, and ask you.
I remember you sent me to Tamale and why and all of that, but it was that burning desire to say, we do a lot of poems in this fellowship that we do. So there was one which said, the world is wide and wild and wonderful and wicked, and our lives are murky, magnificent, and full of memories, and so malleable. So how do you juxtapose those and ensure that in all through that there's a certain clarity of what we are purposed to do? Yeah.
I cast my mind back and I see over the period your life has changed significantly, and you once referred to yourself as you are now in ministry. I found it a very interesting description of yourself, not as a minister of finance, but in ministry. Is that how you see your work?
I really do, because the work that has occurred January 2017 to now is, in my mind, truly amazing. And it couldn't have been because one was so skilled, but the Lord has been really present in that. So you ask, is the same country, the same people, and somehow there's an intervention that moves macros to a certain level, has certain programs. The world is looking at Ghana differently. Still problems that we have to manage. But we really need to be able to also smell the roses and say, okay, this direction is good, and we are going to pursue it. So my challenge is, as I said at the beginning of the year, I'm choosing joy for the year. Whatever happens, we are going to move forward. Yes, we're going to move forward in a very positive way. So I should be able to rally the troops. I should be able to make people feel excited. I should be able to exhibit integrity in what I do. I should just always know that there will be no sudden distraction if one is looking at Jesus' face and keep going. So that's the ministry.
Tell me about the drive. I look back at, you mentioned Wa. Of all the places we've been, I think that was the place that had the biggest effect on you. Yeah. I remember very, very well speaking in Wa at a Springboard event, and all the people gathered, all the experience. What was very, very, very special. But the person who was standing in Wa talking to young people, trying to give them direction and hope at the time as CEO of Databank, and fast forward to now Finance Minister, still talking about the continent and how we can rally the young people to make a contribution. Is it the same, Ken? Is there a link? And if so, what is it that is driving you in this mission?
Is there a link? I think, through all of that is a realization that, well, first of all, that we Ghanaians are truly special people, and this is a special country, and our responsibility is to make this purpose realized. So yes, and the people to be able to do that are really, in the end, the youth, and the question of education and inspiration. So when I look at myself through all these vicissitudes of how I came to be where I am and from the village, it is quite clear to me that the capacity of our nation to change is immense. How do you draw that spirit and a sense of purpose for others to also follow as an example? And I think that's a mission, and to be really fearless and courageous in that, and believe what the founding fathers wanted for our nation. I think was it yesterday that Olara mentioned that Ghana is so small, but Ghana, the power of its ideas is what captivates the continent.
Olara Otunnu, former UN Under Secretary General. That man is dangerous.
Yeah.
Hey. We'll talk about Olara and then also try to trace the story you mentioned about coming from the village. When I come back from this break, I'm going to be asking Ken to help us understand his own journey, the learnings from his journey, and how you can juxtapose that against this quest to give many more people that opportunity to be able to live out their dreams and become all that God meant for them to be. But this is Springboard, your virtual university. Our discussion is about the African Leadership Initiative and the quest for the good society. But in that good society, everyone must have a place. How do we make it possible to have a continent where everyone grows up knowing that they belong and they have a place? Springboard is brought to you by Legacy and Legacy. Enjoy 99.7 FM. This program is proudly sponsored by MTN, Ghana's #1 network. MTN says MTN Pulse Just Be. The Enterprise Group, Enterprise Your Advantage, UMB Bank, UMB Speed Up, Digi Bank, Let's Go, and Access Pension Trust, your reliable partner in pensions. When I come back from this break, I'm going to go into Ken's story, the part that is the story of vulnerability and the story of opportunity. And out of that, encourage somebody that no matter where you are starting from, God has a plan for your life, and you will live that dream if you lift up your hands to God. Please don't go away.
How do you intend to sustain yourself when you retire?
My children will take care of me when I'm retired. I am a professional. I can work till 80.
Some people leave their retirement to chance. How are you planning yours? Your attitude today can help you avoid struggling to survive when you retire. With 50 Ghana cedis monthly investment in the Access Pension Plan, you can accumulate 700,000 Ghana cedis in 30 years. This investment will guarantee you retirement incomes that far exceeds your current income. Visit www.accesspension.com to sign up or call 0302-543-287 or 0544-321-966 for details. Access Pension Trust, your reliable partner in pensions.
UMB was established in 1972 as the premier bank for the corporate and private sector in Ghana. From our very beginning, as the only Ghanaian bank serving all categories of businesses, we set a standard for excellence and innovation over the past 45 years. We've built a financially healthy and strong bank, demonstrated our commitment to our customers and to growing businesses, and exhibited originality and innovation at every turn. At UMB, our focus is built around people, service, products, and technology. These are the key to our present success and our future triumphs. At UMB, we're poised to make a difference not only with our customers, but also in the banking industry. We invite you to share in our future. Our future starts now with you.
When you don't have the Enterprise Advantage app, you're not in control.
Boss.
Yes, Akwesi.
I'm at where they sell the coat. What size do you like?
What coat?
Coat, office coat.
I said get me a quote. Quotation from Enterprise. You pa. What? Save yourself from the stress. Take advantage of the Enterprise Advantage app. Make your claims, check statements, request for a quote, and buy a policy from any of our subsidiaries. What's more, you can also get health tips, traffic information, find mechanic shops, and more on your Enterprise Advantage app. Download the Enterprise Advantage app on Google Play and Apple Store now. Here is to 95 years of trust.
Enterprise, your advantage.
Enterprise is indeed your advantage, and Springboard is your virtual university. Tonight is that night we've been talking about for a while, and we get to have Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta in the studio, not as finance minister, but as a friend of Springboard, and very importantly, the founder of the Africa Leadership Initiative. He's helping us to understand what the initiative is about. Importantly, the journey of the initiative, some of the fellows that have come through the initiative, how you can be a part of the initiative, and the dream to build an Africa in which everyone has opportunity. Bernard Achu Akumazanu says, I love this man. I just want to meet him one day for a 1 minute handshake. Charlie, we could arrange it too. Don Francis Hanuman says, I'm having a great time with Minister Stewart Mensah says, keep on with the good work. Let's talk about the man behind the vision. Let me take you respectfully back a few more years behind 20 years to the beginnings of your life or the beginnings of your journey. A story you once told on the global stage and had everyone talking about it all over the world. But I think it's so relevant for the benefit of that young person listening or that person starting their journey who says, oh, I wish I were like you, but my way, as they say, I'm so far away that I don't think I can become another kind of rapper or another accomplished person to even talk about moving from success to significance. Just help that person to contextualize from your own journey.
I think really, I mean, you cannot give up, and the reason I say that is that when you realize that you were almost aborted, that B, you had to live with your mom as a single parent, go to school in the village, somehow, dad recognizes you later and brings you to the city. Then you get an opportunity to go through Legon Primary, Achimota Primary, etc. You're so giddy that you fail your A levels and like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? But that was interesting.
Did you fail your A levels?
It was really not good. So you do it again. They call it the Second World War. But that was fascinating. He was then in Parliament. And he said, well, if you think you can be in this house and fail, then be my driver. So I then grew up for maybe a year driving Dad to Parliament and sitting in the balcony and listening to these debates. So the first time I went to read the budget, I'm like, oh my God, God had moved this thing ages beyond me. Anyhow, so that was interesting, and then got a chance to redo the A levels again, and then did the SATs and got the opportunity to go to Columbia. Did that. Wall Street was open at that time when I graduated, so got a chance to work there, and then went to Yale, and then came back to Wall Street. So before I realized, I'd been in the States for 10 years without returning to Ghana, 1980 to 1990, and I came back then, and it was really amazing because the kinship was very strong for someone who had become a real New Yorker. And I got back to New York really quite unsettled and thinking, one must go back. What are you going to do, Wall Street? And I just met Angie, and she was doing a PhD in Vancouver. I was in New York. And so I said, I think I'm looking to go home. And of course, expecting her to say, oh, that's crazy, I won't go. And she said, yeah, right, why don't we think about it and do it? I'm like, oh, God. So now we have to do it. And came and began to do some work with Kelly and Togbe Afede, Judith Edu, as to trying to set up something in investment banking here. We got a small office in Cantamanto, where we then started, how do you start an investment bank in Cantamanto? But we were precautious, we were excited about what we wanted to do, and just felt that, just throw caution to the wind, enjoy the moment and see where it goes. But just a push for excellence and the freedom to exercise what we had learned and to do, and knowing that it's a break at a time. And 20, 30 years later, I guess this year is the 30th year of Data Bank, actually, looking at it. This is where we are. So really, for me, there's nothing that is impossible. I think God is just a great guiding principle in all of this that we have to do, and there will be some very difficult moments all through that. But he says, no sudden disaster would happen, and keep looking in his face and not the waves, and he will direct you.
let me borrow from your story, Ken, and it's an amazing story to tell. Two aspects I didn't know about. One was the parliament. The parliament.
Yes,
driving to
that's
parliament.
amazing.
So anytime you go back there, you remind yourself you are back at the same place.
I am.
But the story has changed.
Yeah, and it really struck me when I stood there reading the first budget in March 2017. And fortunately, Dad was up and around, so he came to Parliament. He was sitting right across from me. I could see him.
Wow.
Yeah, and also the ministry, because that was where Dad was as a deputy minister. So when I walked into that place too, I'm like, this is familiar.
You must feel a very strong sense of destiny. And let me ask you about the spring meetings of the World Bank. When you go back there too, does it also remind you of
Washington and yeah. It's because I needed to understand what was happening in Ghana since I had been back in a decade. So I went from New York to Washington quite a bit to just try to appreciate what the Bretton Woods were doing to Ghana, so that I can focus on what I was going to be doing when I come here. But I think we had some sessions at the Aspen in which we were supposed to describe ourselves, and I said, I think I'm a bridge, so to be able to appreciate what a woman goes through to make a decision whether to abort or not to abort, to go to school in the village and understand what it is to dance, to be able to get some income to go home, how to carry firewood, how to go to the farm, to come to Accra, to go to the Saito schools. I was in the Nima cluster and the Kaneshi cluster, and then finally experimental before Dad came, and then sort of moved into Legon, which was a little too fine for me. I couldn't even spell Kenneth at that time, so I'm called Nanaya, which I knew. And so you can see, the failure of the A levels, the drive into Parliament, going to America and getting into Wall Street, which meant that you met, the richest, the smartest people. So you learn to kind of demystify all things, and therefore, as representing Ghana, you are really confident in what you are doing, because you've kind of traversed that field before.
You traveled the journey.
Yeah, and that's been helpful.
Let me take you to the words of Ugandan diplomat, politician, and the former Under-Secretary General of the UN, Olara Otum. And he, borrowing from your example about Saito, and Daniel Alassane sat in the same chair and said he went to Saito in a remote part of the northern region. Dr. Ishmael Yamson mentioned going to Saito. Alex Bamfo mentioned going to Saito. Olara's comments on Saturday were urging African leaders to create a more equitable Africa, where a child who goes to Saito has hope that they too can become somebody. In his own words, if not, you create an Africa in which the child who goes to Saito can only aspire to be the champion drunkard in their local community. What's your response to that?
Yeah, my response is that it does not have to happen at all. I mean, I think Keith, one of the moderators at Aspen, describes this fellowship as a bunch of intergalactic warriors, swooping in to change the wrong and to fight evil and to push it away. And the quality of the fellows indicate a certain problem-solving capacity and a deep care and empathy for the world. But really, I mean, for me, the intervention of technology will go a long way to eliminate, that schism that seems to be growing. But it takes leadership. When President Akufo-Addo says free senior high education, and someone says you can't afford it, and he says it's a choice. So you choose, whose child should be left behind, and what is your greatest asset as a country. Now, if we have that type of mindset, and the country begins to accept that we cannot not provide for our population to have the skill set for the fourth industrial revolution, then we can do it. So in my mind, the pedagogy has to change in terms of how we educate people. Technology has to be fully integrated in what we do, and we should be very deliberate about these TVETs and STEMs and STEAMs that we are bringing, so that skill sets are relevant to the future.
I'm going to be allowing our listeners to join this conversation because we just need to know what they want from you as we try to build an Africa where everyone can dream and everyone can rise to the occasion. J.S. Kujo says, tell Honorable Ken I want to learn and relearn his wisdom and more importantly his humility. Thompson Osuba says, Reverend, I'm enjoying the show. I think Ken is a great man the youth would have to look up to. He should open up more opportunities to the masses, especially those in the deprived parts of our country. Kwame Ekremet says, great humble man Ken, God bless you. Anthony Ni Aditi Ajay says, inspirational. With God nothing is impossible. Emmanuel Oseakoto says, what a humble start to a great man. I love it. Emmanuel, the point really is this, that no matter where you are starting from, God is able to lift you up and make you somebody so you can live out your dream. And that's the Africa that we are talking about, where anyone and everyone can dream and can go ahead and live out their dreams. Can let me tell you about a very interesting story that happened in Wa. Today, let's stay in Wa a bit.
Okay. I think it's my best region, actually.
We love Wa for several reasons. And one of the interesting experiences when we went to Wa was hanging out with senior high school students, young female senior high school students. Comfort was doing a mentoring session for them, and we're asking them what they want to become. And predominantly, teaching and nursing were dominating. We thought it was fine. I mean, these are two great professions that invest so much in people, so we thought it was very fine. And then one person came to us and said, well, I want to be a doctor, but my parents say perish the thought. And then we asked her, why do they say perish the thought? And she said, listen, the reason why many of us want to become teachers and nurses is because we know that we are guaranteed employment, government jobs. And then it struck us that so the reason was not just the love for the profession, but the safety net that it provides. I want you to speak to the comment made by this listener who says, Thompson Osuba, who says, I love you, Minister, but can we create more opportunities for the masses, especially those in the deprived parts of the country? So let's juxtapose the thoughts of Thompson against these young ladies who say, let's go to a safe job like nursing and teaching. That one, government will take responsibility for finding you a job. Let's speak to those people in those rural areas who say, help us, Mr. Minister, we need to see hope that there is opportunity for us.
Yeah. Very good question, and is very daunting. I mean, with regards to the issue of the youth demographic bulge and the capacity of our current system, public or private, to create jobs for them. So that's a very rational decision to want to be a teacher or a nurse because government will sign a check for a job for you, and then we moved on to NAPCOR to try and absorb some of that. But truly, you know, when one sits there thinking policy, there can be some individual interventions, but the truth of the matter is that how do you make the whole stream rise? You know, how do we create an environment in which there's a sense of macro stability, which people will tell you we don't eat, but it is through that you can then have a private sector that is more robust than you have. Because in the end, we need to find a way for the private sector to lead this charge of employing people. So we've gone through 3 years where I think we've gotten a bit relative stability. You have certain programs like schooling, senior high school, so they are beginning to build a skill set. You see the interventions of 1D, 1F, and or planting for food, etc., all in an attempt to widen. Not that you won't make mistakes while you are doing that, but at least in a broad sense, in the direction that is relevant. My suspicion is that going through this very challenging banking crisis also, so that the chassis, which is the liquidity that you need, also is becoming a lot more stable. The banks are much better off than they used to be. We are going to be paying, you know, all the depositors over time, so that's also helpful. So it brings some liquidity. I think it will give people a chance to breathe, you know, and then be able to have more opportunities than we have. But I think it's a slow process, but I think we've done the real heavy lifting these 3 years, and we are going to be a lot more aggressive of how you provide resources and training for the youth to
two words, resources and training. So young people, the words are resources and training. Let's open the phone lines to you out there. 030-221-6541, 0244-340-437. What would you like Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta to hear from you in terms of opportunity, in terms of feedback, in terms of your lessons from a story, in terms of the African Leadership Initiative? Talk to your minister. 0244-340-437, 030-221-6541. Those are the numbers to call. But we are hanging out with Ken Ofori-Atta as we unpack the story of the Africa Leadership Initiative, the quest for a good society, the desire to build an Africa that is inclusive, where everyone can get the opportunity to play their game, make their contribution, and enjoy their role on the continent. So 030-221-6541, 030-221-6541, and 0244-340-437. That's the number to call. Ken, let me come to the future.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here with regards to the Africa Leadership Initiative? Where do we go from here?
I think really now is now sort of the creation of a Pan-African unit, and that really, in a sense, I mean, if you look at the AU 2063 with regards to where the continent needs to go and the type of population that we are going to have, it's going to take some deliberateness in tackling some of these issues of poverty and technology. So my sense is, by creating the Pan-African Ali, we then can take these topical areas and really dissect and find solutions to them. Because when you saw those 100 people in that room, I'm not sure there's any problem given to them together as a collective that they can solve. So that's, for me, the excitement for it. You remember at one of our last poems was Ben Okri yesterday, and he says, will you be at the harvest? And we should be.
Let me take you back to Ibadan.
Is greater than our past. Yeah.
Let me take you back to Ibadan several years ago and to the writings of Leo Tolstoy. How much land does a man need?
Yes.
And sitting down deep into the night thinking about that reading and how much of an impact it had on my life.
Yes.
Funnily enough, the very first edition of Springboard was based on that writing. How much land does a man need? And the guess what? Grace Amiel, being also a fellow of the Africa Leadership Initiative, she was the guest for that show, and then I think you were the second guest on the show, and that was in August 2008. So you're looking at a future in which we can string together the various fellows and their contributions from across the continent and leverage them to push things forward.
Yes, we are, and the issue about how much land does one need is important, because it's a certain liberation by the time you finish reading that, and appreciating in the end that it's only 6 feet that you would get.
Right.
He actually did get there and touch his hat, which means that he had completed the cycle. It was with his last breath, and it was gone. So you become a finance minister, and you have all sorts of resources available to you, but do you need them? Can you drive a Kantanka around town and still get to where you want to get to? Can you stay in your own house? Can you support other people to grow? Because it then you begin to realize that everything is a stewardship, and that the end game is for you to be that angel that the Lord has brought to help somebody else. So how much land does one need? It becomes a resonating thing as you sit in that chair.
Where do you see yourself going forward? You have a big part to play in what we are doing as a country. You have a dream that is African in nature, in terms of challenging leaders in various countries to do what they are doing. But you yourself, where do you see yourself in all this?
I don't know. It's very. I mean, you see a lot of things, and I think I'm beginning to formulate an idea that actually, Ghana is an idea, and maybe Ghana is not ours. Ghana set the seed for political emancipation in Africa, and it sent a fire through the continent. 60 years later, the Continental Free Trade Agreement is being situated here, and that is the future, trade and investment. And we have to really be at the vanguard of that and promote that. We also are a stable democracy and have a certain sociology which welcomes people. So can Ghana then become that green space that just shows the best of Africa, and how we should then be more than the Switzerland, of the world, because in here will then be the peace, the push for equality, the push for social mobility, social justice, that haven, and that just says that let's all protect Ghana, because it is through here. I mean, with the present declaration of a year of return, we are talking about 400 years of injustice being relieved and saying that, let's solve that. Why should it be this tiny country that always brings freedom to everybody?
Talking about that, anytime I get to hang out around with Nigerian fellows or my friends from Nigeria, there's a certain sense, and yesterday Omobola Johnson made that point so succinctly. She says, we just envy you here in Ghana. There seems to be a certain position among Nigerians that our country is far ahead of them, far better than theirs, and they say we Ghanaians don't see it, and they always argue with us. It's just amazing how they see our country compared to how we see our country.
I think we do have issues, but we need to sometimes sit back a little to smell the roses and understand where we are in the present, so that we don't diminish it. And I think that's a real challenge when maybe you are too close to the type of relative success that we are having. Why should we, have the longest bond in Africa?
Right.
Right. You begin to ask these questions. Why is a year return here? And let me tell you something. So, you are organizing this economy. You have these foreign exchange issues. We have 3 months cover, 4 months cover, but really, Albert, we should have like 5 years foreign exchange cover, so it's not an issue. So what are the elements that will create Ghana as a regional hub to be able to have logistics and aviation and manufacturing, etc.? And if you were to look at Nigeria, even as your sole benefactor of what you do, manufacturing, that's 100 and something million people. How do you exercise that? If you look at this vision that the president has, and for the first time in U.S. history, about 2 million African Americans are becoming pensioners each year. Averagely, it's about $17,000, on the low side. So that is $34 billion if this becomes their home that could come through. So you begin to realize that it's just limitless if we ourselves begin to understand where we sit in this cosmic and say we are going to do what our forefathers dreamt of and make ourselves different. But to relish it and understand that, we are in some good times and we need to work harder.
Alright, let me apologize to our listeners. Our technical challenges didn't allow us to take the phone calls, but I got a number of messages. I'm going to read a couple of them, even though we won't be able to respond enough to all of them. But Nana Kofi was asking, after being away from Ghana for a while, what shocked you most upon your return? And then Cephas Maudem says, Honorable, may I know how you got into partisan politics and what is a conviction? Master Akesi is faster. Ask Minister, if the fellowship is inclusive, why do you have to be recommended? You should just be able to access it and enter. And it has several questions that people have that we can't answer within the next minute that we have. But to sign off, Ken, and we definitely should have you back to have a longer conversation about this. But Ken, tell me your closing thoughts for everyone listening out there.
Albert, I just think we have an incredibly wonderful country with a purpose that is deeply beyond us. I think we have a leadership that can take us where we want to go. I think we need to extend the sphere of consensus, so that both parties, however they are, we essentially on 80% of the issues of how we want to be a great nation we understand, and then we fight on the margins on 20%. We can't diminish what is good for the nation through that.
Can I constrain you to say what you just said again, please? The last comment you just made. If, for the benefit of our listeners, you can say it again, please.
Streams of thought. I don't know what's going on.
You thought about being able to build consensus.
I think we need to build on a consensus on a broad raft of things, about 80-90% of what we know we need to do as a nation.
As a nation going forward.
And
so
then
the marginal 10%.
The 10% we can fight
if you did that with the populace, we would love you forever.
Then we should try and... I think that the challenge then is for people to really speak up, because democracy requires a voice.
Ken Ofori-Atta, Finance Minister of Ghana, founder of the Africa Leadership Initiative. Time flies when you are in good company. Sorry to my colleagues, Amos and Sir, we cancelled the data exchange segment. Jojo can we cancel the game changer segment, but we are very blessed to have spent the full hour with Ken Ofori-Atta. Coming up next, the Walk with Jesus, and Reverend Ransford Abose will be talking about the history of Ghana, the history of the church in Ghana, with a spotlight on the Evangelical Presbyterian Church. And he's hanging out with Reverend Dr. Fred Mausi Amevunku. And we want to say a big thank you to Comfort Matthew, Priscilla, Amos, Emmanuel, Jojo for making this possible, and a big thank you to you, Ken, for hanging out with us.
Thank you. Privilege. Thanks so much.
And all of you.
God bless you. I will. Bye.
All right.